Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with the anatomy of a headshot. Let's get straight into it.
Video was voted for by patrons of Questions for Science. You already know what happens when someone is shot in the head.
Get what you fucking deserve!
Oh,
They die. On the surface, yes, a headshot is a fatal wound, but beneath the gory reality, there's a lot that goes on when a bullet enters someone's skull. First
Really?
things first, in terms of firearms, we're talking strictly pistols and rifles, not shotguns. Because
yeah, because a shotgun would just completely destroy everything, paint the walls.
a shotgun to the head is pretty self-explanatory.
Dead!
Let's start at the
Eesh.
firearm, shall we? When a bullet is fired from a pistol or rifle, the bullet travels through a rifled barrel. A rifled barrel has grooves in it that cause the bullet to spin. When this spinning bullet penetrates the skull, its rotating motion flings cranial tissue outward. Tissue then expands to about 12.5 times the diameter of the bullet, but is only this stretched for about 5 to 10 milliseconds and then shrinks back down to normal size. For instance,
True.
a 22 caliber bullet produces a wound of 2.7 inches. A 38 caliber bullet creates a 4.4 inch wide wound, and a 45 caliber bullet creates a 5-inch wide wound. Though it's very short, the expanded cavity does a remarkable amount of damage to the skull. This wound creates a vacuum effect, causing air to rush into it, making the cranial cavity expand, causing secondary fracture lines that spread out from the wound. Most fractures
Damn.
occur at soft locations, like the temples and orbital plates behind the eyes. The higher power the firearm, the more secondary fracturing of the skull, especially at more thick and hard locations like the front and back. Speaking of high-powered,
Could you imagine what it means, like what it feels like to get shot in the head? Couldn't even imagine it. I mean, even though from what it looks like, it looks pretty gory, but out of all the deaths you could have, it seems like the quickest one to die from.
what factor do you think contributes to making a bullet more damaging to the human body? Its length, its velocity, or its weight? The answer is velocity. To
Velocity.
understand why, let's look at this
How fast something travels throughout the air.
equation for kinetic energy. In this case, the kinetic energy of a bullet is equal to the weight of the bullet times its velocity squared divided by the gravitational acceleration constant times 2. This may seem like a lot, especially if you haven't taken physics, but allow me to make this insultingly simple. More kinetic energy equals more ouch. The higher the kinetic energy of a bullet, the more damage it does. And we can prove mathematically how velocity does this. So let's make everything a value of 10. Okay, so the weight is 10, the velocity is 10,
Oh fuck, we're going back to school.
and the gravitational constant is also 10. We run the equation and the kinetic energy is 50. Okay, great. When we double the weight of the bullet, the kinetic energy also doubles to 100. Now, if we double the velocity, the kinetic energy does not double, it quadruples. When there's
What?
more kinetic energy, there's just overall more damage. We're talking a stronger
Sure.
pressure wave through the
So
skull,
kinetic
more
energy.
external gases going into the head, more secondary fracturing, and even splitting of the skull itself. This is why rifles are more lethal than pistols, not because of the weight, but because of the velocity of the round.
Well,
Now, let's
the
look at what
caliber
happens
of the
inside
round.
the skull. When the bullet punctures the skull, it creates an entrance wound, about the size of the bullet. If it exits the skull, it creates an exit wound many times larger than the bullet itself. This happens in nearly all mediums a bullet passes through, whether it be plastic, metal, wood, or bone. This is because as the bullet passes through the medium, it creates a shockwave in front of it which widens. Additionally, the bullet may rupture or mushroom, increasing its surface area. As for the interior of the skull, the bullet causes the bone to bevel. The best way I can illustrate this process of beveling is with a piece of Swiss cheese. This side of the cheese is where the bullet enters and is very clean and small. This side is where the bullet exits and is very wide and flared out. This flaring chips pieces of the skull and launches
Oh.
them into the brain, causing more damage. Once in the brain, 3 things can happen to the bullet. 1, it can slow and stop. If it loses enough of its energy when it pierces the skull,
there's been like recorded history. There's been people that have survived a headshot. So I don't even know how the fuck that happens.
it will stop in its path inside the brain, probably at the other end of the skull. 2, it passes cleanly through, or 3, it ricochets inside the head.
Oh, that's
Of the
fucked.
3, the least common is the third, accounting
Double?
for about 20% of all bullet paths. If the round was fired from a high-powered rifle, it will most likely pass through. If it's fired from a pistol, it will likely stop in the brain or ricochet. Also, interesting fact, most skull ricochets aren't like this, where the bullet bounces off at an angle. Though it does happen, but not frequently. In the majority of ricochets, the bullet follows the round groove of the skull. The skull is actually very strong, and the bullet, having lost so much energy passing through, simply glides along the groove,
I could just
sometimes
imagine
sitting
that
just
happening.
beneath the scalp. Finally, what happens to the brain in this whole ordeal? Well, it's bad. The brain is a solid, inelastic, and incredibly soft organ. Unfortunately, these properties do nothing to reduce the damage the brain receives from a gunshot. In contrast, elastic organs such as your intestines, stomach, and bladder receive less damage from gunshots. The energy from the pressure wave is dissipated because the tissue stretches. However, solid inelastic organs like your liver, pancreas, kidneys, heart, and brain receive full damage from the pressure wave because the tissue does not stretch. Finally, the distance the bullet travels from the barrel to the head can also determine how damaged the brain is. If the shot is far enough away, the bullet may actually bounce off the head. It'll still cause a wound, similar to getting hit in the head with a baseball bat or a hammer, but
How
again,
far
it
are we
won't
talking?
actually penetrate the skull, but will still do severe damage. Of course, these shots are well over 100 yards away and are from low-powered firearms like a pistol or a .22. Contact shots, on the other hand, where the muzzle of the firearm is placed on the victim's head and then fired, turns the brain into a literal pulp. This happens for two reasons. Firstly, the bullet has the highest velocity when it strikes the skull, delivering the most energy possible. Remember this equation? Secondly, the hot expansive gases that are behind the bullet follow it into the wound. These gases then expand in the victim's brain, pulpifying it, as well as causing the skull in some cases to split open. With all this being said, believe it or not, headshots are not 100% fatal. On average, they're 90% fatal given the right circumstances. In my next
10%
video,
chance.
I'll discuss how and why some people have managed to survive a headshot and still live to tell the story.
There, bro. That's it. Anatomy of a headshot.